Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And welcome to the Back of the Range. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 219. Well, I am fairly certain that my fall collegiate golf travels have come to an end. Nothing until next spring. But what a special time at the Williams Cup in Wilmington, North Carolina. As many of you know, the host school, the University of North Carolina Tar Heels, were able to capture the team title, led by David Ford and Austin Greaser, both former guests at the Back of the Range. And the individual title was captured by Trent Phillips from Georgia, also a former guest at the Back of the Range. His wire-to-wire six-shot victory, rounds of 64, 69, 68, just incredibly impressive at Eagle Point. That golf course, by the way, was incredible as well. I know that everyone's following me on Instagram. It's hard to take a bad photo at that place. And by the way, as you all know, there are so many fantastic talents in the amateur game right now. Lots of bombers out there that will just leave you dumbstruck when you see how far they hit it. Now, Trent moves it as well. I'm not trying to suggest that he dinks it out there 250 or anything like that. But if you want to watch one of the most creative and intuitive players in the amateur game, go watch Trent Phillips play golf. Incredible short game. He shapes it in both directions, plays fast. He's just so much fun to watch. This victory will move him up in the PGA Tour rankings. So before he turns pro, after the end of his career at Georgia, go to an amateur event and watch Trent play some golf. Now that I'm off the road, the episodes are coming fast and furious. There are so many spectacular ones on the way. One that I have been meaning to release for quite some time is this one that you're about to listen to. And it features the 2020 Massachusetts Amateur Player of the Year, Nick Maccario. Nick is a friend of the podcast. Met him through Instagram, as he has been following along since day one. And we would always joke, and he would joke about, what do I got to do to be a guest? We met for the first time at the Jones Cup earlier this year. We spoke a lot about that. And then a few weeks ago, he made it all the way to the semis of the 2021 US MidAmateur at Sankaty. Now, not that he needed that finish to make it here as a guest on the Back of the Range, but it just seemed like the timing would be perfect to get his thoughts on his great year, how he approaches the game. Work-life balance is always very important for MidAms. We talked about that extensively. As always, if you like this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Make sure that you are subscribed in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Every episode is available at thebackoftherange.com. And again, all of those photos and videos that I create when I'm on the road, they can be found on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm probably going to repurpose and repost a lot of the content that I created in the fall, just as a kind of recap of the year. So go check that out when you have some time. With that being said, let's get right to it. Nick, you've made it to the Back of the Range. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you for having me. It's about time.
See, we're starting off on the wrong foot already. What do you mean about time? Now you've been listening to this podcast for quite some time. That's actually how we first kind of got to know each other. And then of course there's the whole Jones Cup feast that we'll get into later. But yeah, I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast, and congrats on all your success. For people that only know who wins these US MidAms, yes, Stuart Hagestad did capture his second title, but semifinalist, dude. What's life been like after getting back home and getting back into the swing of things as, a working stiff? But
exactly.
You had quite the week, didn't you? Yeah,
it was great. Starting off, knowing that you're exempt helped. I know we'll get into that, but it's been phenomenal. I've had people at work reach out. Coming back to the pile of emails was not so much fun. It probably took me a couple hours to read through what's in. Yeah. They don't. They're not going to hear this. Well, I just deleted them all. But it's been a lot of fun. It's, I've gotten some people to reach out from, local newspapers, whatever it is. And then, a certain guy from Back of the Range podcast reaching out to me. So, the big dogs are chomping at the bit, which is fantastic.
When you see how much attention you get and you feel that attention from coworkers and friends, obviously it's great and it's nice to be recognized for what you do outside of work, but is it kind of also like they don't quite understand everything that goes into making this happen? It's not like you just rolled up and it's so much different. And I mean, you know exactly where I'm going with this. There's people that see you lifting a trophy or they see you have a nice finish and they think it's like, oh, that's what Nick does on the weekend. He works here and then he just goes and plays some golf and they give him a trophy. And isn't that great? Are there times where you're talking to coworkers trying to like, man, if you only knew how much work goes into this?
Yeah, sometimes, I think as golfers, we're always either, really playing something up or really playing it down, right? If you ask people, how much do you practice, or what do you do to get ready for this stuff? And,
Right.
and they expect to hear, oh, you're doing it 7 days a week. Or, we try to be modest and say, oh, just 1 to 2 times a week, right? To make us ourselves, feel a lot better.
Right.
So totally. I mean, there are some people that at work that don't understand it, but certainly appreciate the finish and reach out to me. And that's been fantastic. But it's hey, I used to get up early in the morning to go hit balls, or, I would do it right after work, right? Especially now this time of year in Massachusetts, we're running out of sunlight early. So, it's, hey, we're finishing up a 5 o'clock call with a client, then I'm going to go run to the range and, try to hit, 60 to 70 balls just to, stay intact and, using PTO, right. Using, time off to go play golf tournaments. People are like, oh, that's fun. It's like, yeah, it is definitely fun and it gets you what you want. But, it's definitely a battle.
Oh yeah. It's a commitment. And then, as you said, just up in Massachusetts, we got to talk about getting your start in the game and also how you thrive in a place where, like you said, you don't have a lot of sunlight. And if I remember correctly, I live in down South Florida, so I don't have that problem, but you guys get a little snow up there every once in a while, don't you?
We get a little bit.
Just a little
bit. I bet I'm scared for this year for all the rain that we've had.
Okay.
If that turns into snow, we are in deep, deep trouble. But it's a tough place to live and play golf at the same time, but it also forces you to take a nice break, which is also good.
Yeah. So are you a through and through golfer, like from the very beginning, or did you kind of fall the other did you kind of go the way of many other people I've spoken with here at the podcast, where you get into all the sports, the baseball, basketball, football, and then someone puts a club in your hand? How did you start playing golf?
Yeah, well, some people say I probably look like a lineman when I was a kid, and probably still do, but I actually never played football. My brother, who maybe is 125 pounds soaking wet, was the one that did that, which is the ironic part.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
But I grew up playing hockey first. Hockey and baseball were my two big things. And so, as I got older, I kind of realized I wasn't that fast. I didn't throw the ball that hard. And kind of coming up through probably 8, 9, 10 years old, my parents were lucky enough to have a second house on a 9-hole golf course up in North Conway, New Hampshire. And my grandparents lived across the street, and my grandfather really got into the game. And so, I played, every day from, call it, June 10th until we went back to school.
Okay.
Play every morning at 7 a.m. with him and his friends. We'd play 9 holes. And it wasn't like I was like, oh man, this is the beginning of something good, but it just kept me doing something fresh. And, I grew up even earlier than that, just hitting balls and, doing that with my other grandfather, who was really, really good. He was probably a, 2 handicap at his peak. So, both grandfathers played, but I played other sports. Golf was more of just, it was something that I was decently good at, had fun with it, but it was just kind of like a side sport until, I got to high school.
I guess one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is just when you start that young, and it sounds to me like you really didn't have any sort of formal coaching. Doesn't sound to me like you were playing any sort of junior golf circuit. Do you kind of remember a certain point where it kind of graduated from, okay, this is the fun summer thing I do with, with the grandparents, as opposed to, hey, I might actually want to play a little bit more and take this a little bit seriously?
Yeah, for sure. I want to say, so I was 12 years old. We went to Cooperstown, which everyone will love to hear, because my brother says that was my glory days. I went to Cooperstown for baseball, and I just remember, being being, well enough, good enough to be there, and also still playing hockey at the time. And I remember my arm hurting from baseball because I wanted to be the cool kid throwing curveballs,
Sure.
which
Yeah.
hasn't served me well now.
I was that same cool kid in South Florida. So
so it didn't work out well for my elbow. But then I also was playing hockey, and I remember playing hockey, and I transitioned to defense, which I should have done earlier, but I was playing defense. And I remember sliding in front of the goalie on like a fast break trying to defend. And I simultaneously kind of hit my shoulder and my knee into the boards. And it wasn't anything like overly traumatic, but it was like I was out for the rest of that game. And I just remember to myself, like, oh man, like if I get hurt, I can't play baseball or golf. Mm-hmm. And so, that was kind of, coming to Jesus moment, if you will, of, do we want to get hurt? Is it worth it? I'm not going to the NHL. And then from there, I think, credit to my dad or whomever brought it up, I don't really remember, for, getting me a swing coach, and who is probably in my eyes still one of the best ones. Mark Spencer, actually was a captain at Georgia Golf, but happened to be from Haverhill, Mass, and still is. And he even said to me, he's like, dude, baseball and golf are not good for weight transition. Like, make a choice. And so, I think all of that combined, probably right at, 12, 13 years old, started to push me away from the other sports, which I still love, but, definitely got me into golf and got me more into a regiment.
Well, once you figure out what you have the best future in.
Totally.
It's pretty clear cut. So, speaking of come to Jesus moments, you go to St. John's Prep. See how I just simultaneously put that together. Talk to me about. All right, so talk to me a little bit about the high school kind of golf experience you have there. Could you have imagined going anywhere else to set you up for success later on in life?
Luckily, I didn't have much of a choice. So to give you background on St. John's Prep, it's an all boys school, and growing up in Haverhill in like 7th and 8th grade, my parents were like, this kid needs some direction in life.
You still probably do, right?
Oh, I absolutely do.
Okay.
But, so they wanted me to look at, luckily, could look at some private schools and get some direction in life. And so, I heard of St. John's, and, they tell me about it, and they're like, yeah, it's all boys. And I'm like, of course, me being an 8th grade boy, 13, 14 years old, I'm like, I'm not going there. Right. The best part is that I then toured the school, and I was like, this is 100% the place I want to go. It looks even crazier now. It looks like a college campus. And, I found out that the sports teams were really good across, literally every sport. Like our water polo team was nationally ranked, which I would sink, like an anvil, but nonetheless would be cool to be able to know people that do that.
Sure.
So, going to there, it was something where the minute I got there, you knew it was special. There were guys that played from a golf standpoint. We had George Zelotis, who played at St. John's with Keegan Bradley, guys that are around me like Nick Pandolina, who played at BC, Nick McLaughlin, who played at UVA. So to say like it was a powerhouse and has produced some big golf names, Steve Delisio, who played at Duke, it was awesome to be recognized there. You get to play really great golf courses. So, it taught me a lot about how to play competitive golf. And at that point you're like, wow, you can't just go like some other schools, right? Or public high schools where you can be a 3-sport athlete and you don't have to really practice one or two of the sports. I needed to practice just one sport to stay on the team, never mind perform on that team. So it was a good kick in the behind to, make me focus on a sport.
How did you stack up with the other guys on your team? You mentioned you had to practice really hard to stay on the team. But were there areas maybe coming in outside of perhaps a different environment? Maybe the kids on your team came from a country club background where they had instructors and they started playing when they were 7. And it sounds to me that you really were balancing a lot of other sports before you really dove into golf. What was the first thing you noticed perhaps back then that was kind of the clear divide between you and maybe some of the other people on the team, or maybe like, older kids on the team?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, like the difference between a 14 or 15-year-old and like an 18-year-old feels like astronomical. Right. I remember going to, my freshman year tryout, being asked to go try out for the varsity team, and like being on the first tee, like shaking and looking at the kids who were, the seniors and all of that. And you're like, wow, they hit it so far.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing, which in hindsight, they probably didn't know what they're doing. But, you definitely, as I progressed through, my freshman year, there were kids that I was playing with that were members of Salem Country Club, Kernwood. And, I had my family had a golf membership, but it wasn't at, a top 100 golf course. And, they had swing coaches, and I had gotten into that progression, but I didn't really learn how to play per se. Like these kids were on a golf course, right? And they were also getting on course instruction. And,
Great point.
this may have been their only sport. Whereas like this was towards the last sport that I really picked up, going into high school.
It's kind of one of the things that I'm really seeing a lot of when I'm out here covering collegiate events. One of the most so fortunate and just so interesting to be able to walk with these teams during their practice rounds. And, whether it's a Vanderbilt or an SMU or a Stanford or go down the line, Oklahoma State, during those practice rounds, they're not really, I don't think I'm hearing anything about swing theory, swing technique. Hey, it looks like you're lined up left, or hey, your ball, I'm hearing none of that. They are talking about every hole, dissecting, what's your line? What are you thinking about? Let's look at these pin locations. This one's a green light. This one we stay away from. And they're dissecting every single hole as if it is just, it's a puzzle, and they're just looking at 18 different pieces. And I'm guessing, man, you're not getting any of that until you get to St. John's or maybe when you get to college.
Yeah. Well, that's also why the practice rounds are, 5.5, 6 hours.
Well, that's a different episode, Nick. That's a whole other episode.
I have to throw the free shot there.
Sure.
Like you said, I honestly don't think I understood that until, almost the MidAm life. To be honest, I always thought it was, you go out and play a real round of golf as your practice round. And now, I was telling someone at the MidAm, I was like, my least favorite thing to do is to play like a real golf round as a practice round, because subliminally it just sets unrealistic expectations.
Right.
You're not taking in where you can miss, where you can't miss, hole locations, like you said. So yeah, if kids that I played with growing up had that mentality, God, it put them ahead of me by, light years.
Now, many of the guests on this podcast played collegiately, whether it's D1, D2, but a lot of them, even the ones I'm talking to right now, obviously they're current stars in their college golf teams. And it's been a recurring theme since this podcast started, where, the place you need to be is where you're going to be able to play and compete and get the most out of your game. And, not everybody is built to play at an Oklahoma or a Texas. There's so many different programs out there, so many different ways to go about it. You're finding a lot of success here as a MidAm, and, people might think, oh, wow, he must have gone to one of these powerhouse schools. Talk to me a little bit about your collegiate golf experience.
Yeah. I've said it to so many kids, and it's crazy. It is kids, right? Like, I've been to these tournaments that you and I have been at, and they're literally a decade or more, or I was literally playing competitive golf before they were born. So like, having perspective definitely helps. And, college golf was one of those things that I didn't give a ton of credence to probably until my senior year of high school, which, as you know now, is like so far behind.
Sure.
Kids know where they're going,
yep.
When they're freshman or sophomore at the latest. So, from a recruiting standpoint, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't get recruited really. I got recruited by Boston College, but I couldn't add 2 + 2, so I didn't get in and go. So, I chose the smart choice, both geographically, monetarily. So, I went to this small school, and, I was successful. I won the Division II New England's as a freshman, and it was a great experience. But from a practicing lifestyle balance with school standpoint, It probably was the hardest, 7 to 8 weeks. And I give these kids that play now a ton of credit, like we talked about before this, if you're flying around in, first class or whatever, that's a different animal. But, for me, it was the first 6-7 weeks in the small school in New Hampshire. I didn't have really friends. I wasn't able to kind of get out there and do some of the social things because it was, golf, practice, and then, hang out. And then the weekends are, most of the tournaments for us, because we weren't, those schools that you mentioned, it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So you leave the weekend, which obviously, as we all know, college is the best time.
There's a lot of fun to be had.
There's a few things to be had. So, I think for me, that was the experience. And then once I stopped playing collegiately, I still worked at a golf course during the summer at Bradford, where I still play. And I would say I think I played one state am in that time, and just only tried to play one state am, and then maybe would play one or two other events, that were just 36 hole local tournaments. And I loved it. It was fine. I played during, the summers. I would play late at night after working at the golf course. And that was how I, got by. But it wasn't that I lost the competitive juice. It was really just that, I found it in a different way. And then as I've gotten older, I figured out that, I like to do a little bit more than just play those small tournaments.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So you're kind of telling me that when you're in college, the balance was hard. It's hard for you to find the balance, but you've found it a little bit more now as you've gotten older and gone to the MidAm ranks, where instead of balancing schoolwork and
balancing work.
Yeah. Now you're just balancing work.
Yeah, right. Yeah, homework stinks. You had to go to class and do homework. And now, I luckily don't bring a ton of work home with me. I'm still in sales. So, if someone reaches out to me, later at night, I certainly get back to them as soon as I can. But it's been, nice, and, being able to have flexibility in some work, some people understanding, what it does take and, what I have to do to be successful. And I think it's the amount you want it too. So, I didn't necessarily really want it that bad when I was probably 19 to 22. I probably didn't really want to be that good at golf, or, didn't really know what was out there. Right.
Sure.
By the time I got to golf, I was playing against Cam Wilson, who was at Stanford, and was like, well, I'm not nearly as good as him. I'm probably will never be as good as him. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm just going to play recreationally with friends, and that's it. And I didn't know about the MidAm. I didn't know that kind of lifestyle.
Right.
And once I became privy to what that meant, I was like, you know what? That might be for me.
That looks fun. Maybe I should.
Yeah, exactly. I can get behind that.
Maybe we should work on that. So, okay. So, again, you're spending all your time in New England. Growing up in Massachusetts, still living there. I'm a South Floridian, so, I never had to deal with any of this cold weather stuff. I never had to really worry about that as far as, playing golf and maybe go on vacation. You go someplace, go to Scotland, or you go to, I've been to Cabot, places like that. Sure. But as far as having it be a day-to-day, I mean, give me an idea what some of the weather that you've played in, which is like, this is pretty much, standard issue, that I would be like, no, I'm just going to stay inside and record a podcast episode today.
Oh yeah. It's funny though. I say my blood has definitely thinned, in the last couple of years as I've tried to get more south earlier in the year. But, I remember a state tournament in high school that the highest temperature was like 39 degrees. There was frost. Okay. And the year before that, snow was falling in Ludlow, Massachusetts for the state high school tournament, the Division I tournament. And so, those were two where, you're afraid to take a divot first and foremost. The ground is frozen. But then also, playing early in the year, sometimes the greens aren't totally thawed, and you hit one and it's like the ball hits the cart path and it's off the green. So, I would say it's like, people are crazy. People want to go out and play. I definitely have way more of if it's over 55, I will play. If it's under 55, there's going to be sunny and no wind.
Yeah.
I pick and choose when I play golf now.
There you go. What, you mentioned, I definitely want to ask you about some of these unique MidAm tournaments that you've played in. I think, a lot of people listening know about, ones like the Crump, obviously at Pine Valley. And then there's obviously the Thomas at LACC and the Coleman at Seminole.
Yep.
Those are really, that's kind of the Triple Crown, but there's some other ones that I want to talk to you about, especially ones that serve nice steak and lobster dinners. So we're definitely going to get into that. But working man, you got to balance a career, you got to balance, friends and family and keep your game in order. So, it's one thing to be able to go play in these and get invited, but nobody wants to hang a T62 up there and just get their free golf shirt and a towel and call it a weekend. So
Correct.
Is there a strategy that you have that you've implemented in the last couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever you want to call it, but is there a strategy that you've implemented that allows you to perform your best when you do tee it up in these tournaments? Because again, you're not like you're playing a tournament every single weekend. It's spotty or not spotty, but certain spots during the year that you have to peak. What do you do to try and get yourself in tournament mode and tournament conditions?
Yeah, it's hard too, right? Like there are certain times of the year where you feel like you can do less because, you're naturally playing more or it's nicer outside. In the beginning and end of the year, it's harder because of, weather up here. I would say, a few things, one of which is I learned this year not to over practice or practicing with a purpose. Okay. And the one thing I actually took, and I hate to give you credit, but listening to Preston's Summer Hazes episode here, I listened to it after it came out. It wasn't the second it came out because I don't listen to you that quickly.
Oh my God.
But so something he said to me that was really interesting was about how, practicing with a purpose, but also practicing your practice swings with a purpose and, trying to focus on the tempo in which you're taking it back. And the practice swing is the same as your real swing and so on and so forth. And I thought about that and I was like, wow, I've never really thought about doing the practice swing the same tempo speed as mine. Like I certainly take one, either to feel it, bring it inside, depending upon what I'm working on. But, I aimlessly hit balls for so long. And, when you get to a certain point at, quote, being good at golf, everyone can hit a 5-iron. And especially if you get in a groove, you can, hit a 5-iron 20 times dead straight at whatever pin if you're at the range.
Right.
But you never have that shot on the golf course. So, for me, it was learning to focus on what I needed to focus on, whether it was a certain part of my game, but then also making sure that I was disciplined enough to challenge myself to hit different shots and to just try to play a little bit too, not just go to the range. Because like you said, if you just go to the range and you're a range rat, you can end up hitting every shot you want to because it's just repetitiveness and your body gets comfortable. You have the same wind, yep, so on and so forth. You don't get that on the golf course. So, to try to perform at different times, I said this to someone else the other day, like the pros try to do it, call it 6 weeks a year, 4 majors, the players, and, maybe the FedEx or something like that. Right. We're trying to do the same thing around, like you said, Coleman, USAM, US Mid, certain qualifiers, Jones Cup, you name it. And you're not, the other thing is you're not going to do it every week, right? You can't. If you do, you're having a heck of a year.
Right.
But there are certain instances where it's like, okay, if you do hang a 62, or in my case, you hang a 80th at the Jones Cup, it's a learning experience. And then you're saying, okay, well, what did I do well? And then it's, okay, what didn't I do well? And what part of that was it? And this goes back to the Preston part was, which part of my game or which part of my shot was it? Was it swing and execution? Was it game management? Or was it something like just as a mental mishap? And just kind of taking those notes and then using it and being very time oriented, because I have a job, I have a fiance, I have a family, I travel and work. So it sounds like a lot. It's really, not that much, but you do have to be disciplined because you don't have all the time in the world.
It makes perfect sense. And by the way, is Preston Summerhays just like the oldest 18-year-old you've ever met in your life?
Ever.
Okay.
Literally ever.
Okay.
Ever.
I feel like if I just said to that kid, do my taxes, he'd be like, yeah, sure. I can take care of that. No problem. Well, that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And it's almost like going to the gym, and you know what it's like to go to the gym. And
not even, I've never been.
Okay. So, but
you've
like,
seen me.
Well,
You've
but
seen
like
me.
going to the gym and then, doing your little 30 minutes of cardio, and then you look over at the weights and you're like, all right, now what? And you're not going to make any progress if you're just looking at a rack of dumbbells is kind of like just aimlessly looking at a basket of range balls saying, all right, I just whack these and I leave. And you're okay. You're 100% right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've talked about Jones Cup. Now I want to talk about some of these tournaments that are so much fun. So Jones Cup, this previous Jones Cup, I think that was the first time we've met. Being on site, me being on site at a tournament, you participating in it, and that tournament, special place, Ocean Forest. They really pull out all the stops. The course is in incredible shape, and then obviously, I guess I learned this, and so did you. It's held in February, and right there at Sea Island, and there's going to be incredible weather. But there's going to be one day that's a Jones Cup day, which there's like one day of Jones Cup weather. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I'm like, you'll see.
Yeah.
And it was like 60 and raining and blowing, and it was just miserable. What is your kind of approach? I mean, do you even have a different one when you're playing in a national invitational and it's not just MidAms and it's college kids? And also last year it was kind of a Walker Cup year. The COVID canceled some tournaments, so it seemed to me that everyone was there. It felt like
I say
and
that
you. I'm sorry.
No,
everyone was there. And Nick. Okay,
I weaseled my way into that. To be completely
Did you win a
honest,
raffle or something? How'd you do that?
Apparently, yes. I bought all the raffle tickets.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had talked to a couple guys up here, like Parziali and a couple other guys who played the senior, and I asked them, I was like, hey, what's this golf tournament all about? I know it's one of the top ranked ones, and they're like, yeah, you should apply. And they gave me the same caveat that you just mentioned was you're going to have tough weather, but it's always a great field. It's a great golf course. Right. And, I have a cousin from Atlanta who's got some friends that are members at Ocean Forest. And so he put the bug in my ear of like, Ocean Forest is awesome. And I was like, okay, I'll put in my, resume. And I had a good 2020. My world ranks were fairly high. And then I remember getting an email of saying, we'd love to have you and so on and so forth. And then it came out with a field, and I looked and I was like, what happened? Like, did they know who I am, and they know who all these people are? And, as for the golfing side, that was the first time that I had ever been a part of a golf tournament where it wasn't that I didn't feel like I didn't belong, but I was more awestruck of, oh, here's this kid. Like, he's the 20-year-old kid. He's really good. And,
right.
Here's Kevin O'Connell, who won the US Mid. And here's, Joe Delaney, who so on and so forth. And, the Stu Hagestads and everybody. Right. And I was like the last MidAm in the field among these top 5 in the world type guys. And You're like, wow, this is something. So it was interesting. I was not prepared for that golf course. That golf course is it's brutal. I mean, I tell 2 stories of the 4th hole there. I think it was the second day was, like you said, I think it was 55, raining, blowing 30. And I hit driver. I hit it in the center of the face. I hit it straight, and I did not make the fairway. And I had 285 into a par 4. And then the 16th hole, the long kind of dog leg, dead into the wind. Only one person hit the green in regulation on the second day. And we're talking about the top, 40 of the top 100 golfers, or amateurs in the world. So the place is a brute. I love it. The golf course is fantastic. The condition it's in is stupid good. and the food is spectacular, but which we'll get to. But it was an awesome tournament, awesome week. They certainly pull out all the stops, and I know we'll get to that. But from a golfing standpoint, I would say I definitely felt like I was above my ski tips. Now looking back and kind of other tournaments I've played in, I certainly will go back hopefully in 22 with a different mentality and produce better results.
And the other thing too about being over your skis a little bit at some of these tournaments, the thing also that you kind of remember after the fact, unfortunately, it's the last thing you want to tell yourself during the tournament, but after the fact, you take that moment, you say to yourself, nobody else gives a shit how much I feel I'm out over my skis. They're worried about their own game.
Yeah, right.
But you never say that to yourself at a tournament, but that's really what you have to say. Like, nobody cares. No one's really gonna prop you up after you have a bad day, and also no one's really gonna care if you have a great day. They're just gonna be like, "Oh, okay, cool," and move on because they're concerned about their own thing.
Totally. And I think bringing that into each tournament is no one cares about what you're doing. You do your own thing, and if it works out positively, great. If it doesn't, and people remember it's unlike me, right? I remember my bad finishes, whereas the good finishes are great, but you remember the bad ones usually more. It's almost the opposite for the people looking in, right? They look at, oh, Nick came in XYZ at the Jones Cup. I'm not going to text them. It's fine. But then when the good one comes, like, oh, he played so well, right? So it's kind of an equal and opposite effect. So, you have all these ideas in your head of like, wow, these people must be looking at the scores and seeing Nick posted an 80, and it's like, they don't care. The people at home don't care. I don't care. And not to mention it was, 7,400 yards and 55-degree weather. So,
another thing too that I'm thinking about, and I'm just throwing this out there as kind of a lesson for people listening that are, in junior, parents of juniors or juniors that are trying to get into some of these tournaments. Yes, the scores are important, and yes, the resumes are important, but in my opinion, another thing that's so important is make those really good connections with tournament directors and volunteers, and thank them and send a letter and all that stuff. Totally. Because if you don't, you're just another name in the crowd that kind of plays golf well, and you want to be remembered when you go play these tournaments.
Absolutely. And they do a great job. They make it easy for you to say thank you too, right? It's incredible. Well, and even like I know we sat down for dinner, and certain people were at that table, and it's fantastic.
Well, another way to get remembered is by cleaning out the players' buffet, and I just one of the highlights of my year last year. It was so funny because we're at the Jones Cup, and they have this incredible dinner, and it was in kind of a ballroom that was separated, I guess, from where the range was, and a lot of the kids. I say kids, college kids, like the David Fords and the Jackson Van Paris's and the Kelly Chins and those players, they're on the putting green and they're hitting balls, they're doing their thing, and there's a players' dinner, and I think we probably saw half the field come through there, maybe. And all I remember is you and me and Grayson Huff and Jason Gore, and well, now basically it's a table of people that have been on the Back of the Range Golf podcast, and we're just knocking down lobster tail and fillet like nobody's business.
I mean, how can you not? I was floored by that whole thing. I remember after the first round, I looked at you and you're like, how did it go? And I was like, they got red wine in this joint, and going to the bar, and they're like, yeah, you're all set. And I was like, all set. I was like, open bar? There's only 6 of us that can drink in this event.
Yeah, they're getting away pretty cheap, actually. They're running out of Yoo-Hoo, but there's plenty of wine and
Exactly. So, they put on such a spread. I mean, the pretty much grill your own, pick your own filet and lobster and, everything else. And obviously the plethora of red wine was a fantastic, runner up to the golf.
Well, I have a feeling, due to your fantastic finish at the US MidAm, I have a feeling that there's a good chance I'll be seeing you in February But if not, I will be taking lots of pictures of
I'm sure I'll
the
get
lobster.
that.
I'll be doing that. But I think there's a good chance I'm going to see you there. Now, on the flip side, there are some tournaments that are geared towards the MidAms and are geared towards the seniors, where the younger players you really don't see. And of course, obviously there's, like we said, we talked about the Crump, we talked about the Coleman. These are the kind of the triple crown, so to speak, of MidAm and Senior Am golf. But a tournament that I have actually played in one time. I've played in the Gasparilla in Tampa at Palmacia. That's a whole other different animal.
Totally.
That's golf kind of mixed in with a little bit of a party. Wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. First time I got invited, or it was put on my radar, was, I think I was 26. I think I was a year removed from being a MidAm. And I remember going down there, and the first night getting caught off guard, so to say, by the wonderful membership and some of the players. By, it's an open bar. It is, this whole barbecue the first night, and you forget very quickly that you have a tee time the next morning at 8 a.m.
Uh-huh.
So, it's such a great golf course. It's, for those that don't know, is at Palmacia Country Club in Tampa, and it's someone wrote it somewhere. It's like you're getting beat up by the smallest kid in class.
Yes.
And
yeah, it's like 6,400. I think they said it's like okay. So it's like the hardest. It's like the hardest 62 or 6,300 yard golf course in the world, or it's just that you're exactly right. It's just just getting gnawed at. It just gnaws at your ankles.
Totally. And it's one of those too that this is their Masters, this is their major for the year, and they have a divot filling party like the week before, where literally 300 or 400 members go out there with divot mix and fill every divot from the back of the first tee to the front or the back of the 18th green. And they go out there, they take care of this golf course. And throughout the entire week, and this is the one that blows me away, and there are certainly ones, right? And they did this at Jones Cup, so I won't sell any of them short, but they'll come up to us and say, what can we do for next year? And the tournament's not even over yet. It's the first day, and I'm, if I'm playing well, they're like, what can we do? I'm like, do nothing. I love this tournament. I want to win it. And, if I play bad, I say, make the course easier. Obviously I'm joking, but they do such a great job. And I mean, I remember my fiance came to the first one. It was her first tournament that she saw me play in.
You brought your fiance to the Gasparilla and this is what I do on the weekends, honey.
This is what they do. And the public service announcement is, if you are a MidAm, bring your significant other, because they will promote you to play in this golf event, because there's free concessions, alcohol, craft brew on the golf course, and everyone is friendly being down south. So, she was like, this is the best thing in the world. I just got these burger sliders. I got this craft beer. And I was like, this isn't how it normally goes.
I was going to say,
I was like, this is not normal. So they do such a good job. I could go on and on about it, but those are the type of events as a MidAm that I didn't know were out there when, I was, still at the end of college. And now understanding that is there, it makes you want to play better. It makes you want to get into these events. And, I have friends that are kind of, on the precipice of trying to play in more regional national events. And I feel lucky enough that I get into these events.
Right.
And you get to take advantage, and it becomes social. After we're playing, there is not a soul on the range, and no one's on the putting green, and that's the difference. So we joked about it at Jones Cup is, we're stuffing our faces, and there are guys beating balls until the sun's down. That does not happen at these events, and it's for a good reason.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. It's a different vibe. And I guess, gosh, I've had so many different MidAms and seniors on this podcast, and it's so much fun to hear their stories and just to learn about their journey, and then all the different, and it's a nice little club that everyone kind of is a part of, and you see your friends when you go from tournament to tournament. I know it's hard to just pick just one or even two, but are there certain MidAms or senior AMs that you've kind of, because you're a younger MidAm, that you've kind of, not necessarily they've, taken you under their wing and all that nonsense, but ones that when you see that, you can pick their brain about different tournaments or different things that they've accomplished where you want to end up being. Who have you kind of just who have you kind of gravitated towards?
Yeah, well, one of them's easy, and obviously everybody knows him is Pars, Matt Parziale. Being that we're from the same state, he's not that good at golf. No, he's been great because he plays in, he gets invited to all the biggest tournaments, and getting his opinion not only on the golf course, but the event, what he prepares for and how he prepares, and all of that has been great. And I would say even from the senior mids, or senior AMs, I guess, I just played a practice round with Scott Harvey, and it wasn't like I was picking his brain, but you can kind of see the due diligence that they do and the things that they care about. And when I was at Jones Cup, I had dinner with Joe Delaney once or twice, Kevin O'Connell, and you're not directly, we're old enough where it's not like, you're constantly asking them questions of like, okay, what do you do here? How is this? But right. you get it subliminally from, here's how they go about their day. You see them at the range and you're like, okay, here's what they're working on. And you also just kind of can gauge your game against theirs and how they're playing. You're like, okay, they're not doing anything that's outside of what I'm doing. It's just, this one or two shots, or it's not making this mistake. So, and being able to get paired, the coolest part about the Gasparilla was, they get a really great field every year. And I think 2 or 3 years ago, I got paired with Bob Royak after he won the US Senior, and being able to see how he plots around a golf course was like, all right, that's who I want to model my game after. Right. And so we certainly shot the breeze, and, I learned about kind of where he plays and, where he practices and all of that. So it's like you said, it's a super awesome group of guys, and, you can learn a lot if you're open to it.
I would think that just by mentioning that, now I'm thinking about it more, the Gasparilla must be an incredible place to learn just what you said, course management, and how someone approaches the game, because, you're not going to be able to bomb it out there. Bombing it's going to get you into trouble. You need to play within yourself. You're probably going to learn a lot more at a place like that than if you're playing at some 7,200-yard golf course that
right.
really you have to bomb it. You have to gain as much distance as you can. When there's more options, there's more different interpretations of how to play the game. That must be just you're doing homework there. You're going to a library. You're studying under the masters there.
And they've been around there for, these guys have been around for a while, not calling them old, but they're older than me.
Oh, I love that you've already looped in Harvey with the older crowd. I love that. I mean, that's
yeah, he'll appreciate that.
That's on you. Yeah. I mean, but you're mentioning guys that all have been here at the back of except Delaney. Delaney hasn't been here at the back of the range. So
shameless plug. We'll get him on.
I use a lot of big words. I think that's what he's afraid of. So I think that might be it. You had a great 2020, runner-up in the New England Amateur, runner-up at the Mass Am and the We Met Memorial, and just picked up a win at the Hornblower. I mean, you're Mass Am Player of the Year in 2020. Obviously, great year. With everything that's going on, obviously in the world, but leads you into 2021. Those finishes elevate your World Amateur Golf ranking to the point where you are exempt into the US MidAm this year at Sankaty. And it's really, I'm guessing you're licking your chops, not just because, it's not a lot of travel. That's the other thing that people forget with these national tournaments. Bandon Dunes is really cool, and everyone that got to play in the US Am there in 2020, it's great, but it's a long way.
You got to go halfway. Not even halfway across the country, the whole way
across the country. And this US MidAm at Sankaty, up in Nantucket, beautiful. It looked gorgeous, but still, it's a little bit of a complicated travel situation. It's not like you're just flying in, getting a rental car, and off you go. So you got to get out to the island and lodging and all that stuff. How much? Not to say that that's the reason you played so well, but how much does that help when you're playing in a tournament to have less travel and also a place that you're kind of familiar with?
Yeah. I think it was great being exempt because it gave you, less stress, more planning. You can think a little bit more ahead of time. So that was huge. Being able to get out there, early with a brother of somebody I work with. His name's Daryl. Was the best host you could ask for, but got us out to the golf course early, and being able to like take my own car, not have to worry about what I was packing. Right, if I'm flying to, I've never been to California, but if I'm flying to Arizona, I got to bring my clubs and then pack, and then you're thinking about, well, I can only bring this one big suitcase, and then I got to carry on.
Right.
I didn't have to think about that with my car,
Right.
getting onto the ferry. So, I think that was just a natural state of, calm. They certainly the golf was different in regards to how much wind there is there, but you're definitely, there's no jet lag, none of that. So it was certainly, I don't know how big of a benefit it was. I'm sure I'll look back and maybe years to come, or, next year when going to, Erin Hills, when I'm like, wow, it was a lot nicer having to be able to have my own car and,
right.
and be able to travel in state.
Just the stress level, I'm guessing, that's
totally
right. So that's just a little bit less.
Yep.
You have 2 solid rounds of stroke play, get through the playoff, and then obviously once you get to match play, nothing matters. Seeds don't matter.
Totally.
This year, the number 1 seed for the US Am, US Women's Am, US MidAm, and US Women's MidAm, all 4 number 1 seeds lost to the 64 seeds this year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, you learn something new every day here.
I do know something. Really, you do your homework.
I do what I can. So, I mean, this is just it's a match play. Seeds are thrown out the window. Obviously, the primary goal of just about anyone that's playing in a MidAm or a AM or anything, you just get to match play. That's it. Just got to get to match play. Your thoughts heading into match play? Is this your first US MidAm?
This is my first US MidAm. I was an alternate, I think, for 2 or 3 times heading into this. So, it was. I mean, it was my fault, right, that I was alternate through qualifying before. But so this was the first time I was in. Yeah.
So how do you transition from, hey, I made it, I got my player's badge, I'm in a US MidAm, to, hey, let's go get some work done. You're exempt into this thing. You're exempt because they think you're gonna, they think you're gonna compete. So
right.
How do you transition that thought process?
Yeah. So I'll answer that question, then also throw you a small story that
we do stories here. I'm not, well, know that already.
My fiance and my family will love, but going into the week, it was weird because I've never been exempt. I mean, I've been exempt for other, events, through state and local, but not on a USGA event. So
sure.
It was almost like I got some of that awe of like, hey, I'm at a USGA event. I got that out of the way pretty early when, you get in the mail of, your invitation,
right.
2 months early. And so I think that got out of the way and let me focus on the golf part of it.
Okay.
And the other third part is that, I've been playing golf, especially this year with the, somewhat heavy schedule, that I've seen these guys, and, not that I'm diminishing any of them, but it's just like, hey, I can hang with these guys. This isn't the Jones Cup where it was my first really, really big event, and it was more of self-destructive than it was the actual golf of, that side of things. So to begin the week, that was really the mentality. Once match play started, okay, so here's the funny part. So we finish, because of the fog delay, we played Saturday. I finished eagle birdie to shoot 1 over. I was 4 over on the 17th tee box at Sankaty after the first round. Played our final 2 holes in 3 under to get to 1 over. So without that finish, I'm nowhere near. I'm packing my bags and going home. So that was the first positive. The next day, we only played 3 holes of golf. My tee time was, I think, 5:50, and played 3 holes of golf. And then they said, Monday morning, you're coming back to Maya Comet and playing your final 15 holes. I knew I was roughly around the cut line. Long story short, I post 2 over for 2 days, and there's going to be a playoff. It's really just how many spots, how many people.
Right.
So, but we have 3.5 hours between when I finished my round, because we were one of the first ones on the golf course, to when the playoff was going to happen. So, which is a lot of time to think and,
you gotta
mutter the what ifs.
You gotta stay loose, but you also need to shut it down a little bit, because if you don't shut it down mentally, then you're just going to be fried by the time you get going.
Exactly. Yeah. And you don't know what seed you're going to, if you do qualify, you don't know what seed you're going to get.
Right.
And then you don't know if you're going to go off later that afternoon. Like, you might go to the playoff, do it, and then go out and play shortly thereafter against somebody who's just waited around all day. So like you said, you got to do that. So we go back, we get some lunch, we take a shower, and it's me, my caddy, Matt Lucy, and my fiance, Elizabeth. And we're sitting there, and she looks at me and says, okay, I have a question, and I don't want you to take it the wrong way, but can I ask you? And I said, sure. She said, so I just want to get this straight and help me understand. You were exempt for being in the top 40, and you were number 25, quote, in the world, but you're struggling to make the top 64 in this? Like, why? And I was like, okay, shots fired. Are we still getting married?
Are we still, that's my first, I'm so sorry. So whatever happened to that girl?
Yeah, right. Exactly. She's still here. But so, she was obviously being somewhat coy, but the joke from there on out after the playoff, which we ended up going out, making par into a 35-mile-an-hour gale to get in. But after that, every time I moved on in match play, I was like, see, now I'm in the top 32 and I was 25. And then I got to, the 16 and got to 8 and eventually obviously to 4. And every time I got farther and farther, I was like, see, I'm better than 24 or I'm better than 25 in the world. So, but it was just a nice, extra added, accomplishment that, she keeps burning inside me.
That's normally I think about, the hugs and kisses after the rounds and just the emotion, and instead
she wants to see me succeed. That's the story.
That's the story. Okay. Now it sounds to me that she's just poking at you, just like, all right, wow.
She knows how to get under my skin, apparently.
Apparently so. I've lost all train of thought in this conversation now. I'm so. Does your fiance play golf? Does she don't play golf?
Yeah, she does actually. She plays a good amount. She played field hockey, Division II field hockey, and was quite good. And I hear about that quite often. But she's gotten into the golf game for sure. And there are times, and she's learned this the hard way. Sometimes we'll play, and she's like, why is this sport so easy? And then the next day she's like, I hate this sport so much. But
she sounds like a golfer.
Anyone that's ever played golf has muttered those words.
Future Massachusetts women's MidAm champion, going to be on the podcast. Give her what about 6 months, 6 years, something like that.
Yeah, we'll give her 6 years.
We'll save her a spot, no problem. I'm guessing just this achievement, obviously making to the semifinals. It's cliche, but just kind of, beyond your wildest dreams to get that far. Is it validation for the hard work? Is it, do you look at it as just 1 week in time, or do you take more from it to build upon, or do you just say, hey, I had a good week?
Yeah, it's funny. I think as I've now had probably a week or so, maybe a little bit less than a week to marinate on it, part of your brain is like, man, if I make it to the final, who knows what happens? But, going into it, I think validation is the word. People this year, through means of, not trying to, say anything about me, but I didn't play in certain events, state, regional, or national, just because I needed to save time for work, but also, I wanted to make sure that I was exempt for the in-state home USGA tournament that's, we've never had as a MidAmateur championship. And so to then have this plan, execute it, and then get there, and then to come in the final 4 was like the cherry on top, and kind of the people that were like, oh, why is he not playing in, the state amateur, or, this and that, and saying it in a negative way, not in a, I wouldn't either. It was more of a negative way. Those people can obviously look at the result and can see for themselves that it's paid off. So I think that's kind of what I took from it.
Yeah. And that's a different conversation for another time about WAGR and protecting your WAGR. And, the thing is that, and this is not MidAms or seniors. This is everyone. There are players that, go look at who has won the state amateur in 2020 or 2021. Go look at the state amateur champions, and then go look at their Wagger rankings, or go look at the names, the top
Mm-hmm.
guys, unfortunately, the way Wagger is set up, top guys can't play in those tournaments, because even if they win or finish in the top 5, they will lose ground in their Wagger.
Yeah. I mean, look at this year for state of Massachusetts,
Yeah.
The future, as we call him.
Is that what you call Thorbjornsen?
Yeah, I mean, he won, right?
Yeah.
And I think he probably got enough, but it was a work-life balance. It was making sure I had enough time for the fall and anything else I wanted to do, but it was also, do you play in a certain event, and if you don't win, you may not either get a shot at a USGA or what have you. And all the people that have either been there or know what that's, that possibility is like, they're like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You go do it. So for those people, I certainly appreciated all of their, advice, and for the, rumblings of, people making other comments, I luckily can get the last laugh this year. Who knows for future years, but at this point it worked out.
Well, and the other thing too, at the end of the day, you got to play golf when you want to play it, play in the tournaments you want to play in. You're not making a living at this. It's what you want to do. Scott Turner, good friend, he's former guest in the back of the range, runs the minor league golf tour. He sees guys chasing the pro life every day. That's his job, is to put those guys like Sonny Kim and Dylan Meyer and just all, Steve LeBron, all those guys that are chasing. But he's in the same boat. He's a MidAm. He's a phenomenal MidAm down here in South Florida. He's won Palm Beach County Player of the Year. Played with
the Maccario.
There you go. Okay, so Turner, and he fights the same thing. He's like, I want to build my Wagger, but the only way for him to do it is to basically stop playing in all the stuff he's played in for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And I don't know how Turner's not a guy that's going to be like, all right, I'm just not going to go support the Palm Beach County Golf Association. I don't see that that's him. So now what's the answer to that? What do you do?
Totally. And I think it's almost like the flip of what you used. I used to play in all state stuff and then play in one national, and then you make a pivot to, okay, you can't, and Parziale said this to me, is you cannot play every big event every year, all year, because A, you don't have enough time.
Right.
And B, you're going to get worn down. You're going to miss stuff. It happens.
Yeah.
So it's just coming up with a rotation of, okay, maybe I'm playing in the state 4-ball this year, but I'm not going to play the state amateur. But the next year I'll play the state amateur, but I'm not going to play, name it. So, and going from there, and you can't please everybody. And not that, I've not had one tournament director or anybody from any association ever say anything. And, you just try to support everybody, right? As MidAms, we're the ones that, support these tournaments the most, because some of these kids go pro. So, we're the ones that we love supporting, Joel Davenport and the Southern Am, and, Kevin at Gasparilla. So, that's where, you feel guilty not playing in some stuff, but ultimately, like you said, everyone's got their own schedule. You can't play golf every week. It's crazy.
I think also something to keep in mind too is, yes, it's really cool to play in some of these national events, but you also have to remember that winning them and finishing high is not going to be an occurrence every single year. And you also have to keep your game in a condition where you know how to win and how to go low, and not just kind of grind your way through. Like, I don't see you or any other MidAm in the country, for that matter, playing 10 Jones Cups a year, because
you can't.
No, because you're gonna get
your teeth kicked in.
Well, and you're not gonna have that ability anymore. Where like, all right, I'm 2 under, let's get to 5. You're going to be playing golf, defensively and kind of holding on. Like, all right, well, a T18 is a really good finish in this field, but it's changed the way you approach the game.
Yeah, totally. And for me this year, this was the first go around in all these big tournaments. It was the first time getting to know the course, getting to know, what I should be doing from a preparation standpoint and from a, level of exertion standpoint. So yeah, like you said, you got to pick and choose your battles. It's funny, you then come out and play, you feel like you're hitting it the same way. I play the Jones Cup. I throw up an 80 or an 81 in the first round, but then I'll go play, a tournament at a shorter golf course near us here, and you go out and shoot 67, and you're like, I feel like I'm hitting it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
The golf course is probably a little bit easier, but like you said, your mindset's different. So, it's playing in the big tournaments and training your mindset that you should be playing well there and that there's no reason for you not to, but it's set up in a totally different manner that MidAms specifically aren't usually used to.
Well, these are awesome. I'm glad, it's good to actually talk about the mindset of or how to approach a successful MidAm, career, because obviously there are a lot of great opportunities coming your way. I think you're going to be able to parlay that semifinalist finish in the US MidAm to a lot of great events, and I hope you get to go play in a lot of these, like the Crump and the Coleman. And with Hagestad winning, I think that he has probably distanced himself a little bit from the other MidAms when it comes to potentially making another run at a Walker Cup berth for the U.S. team in 2023. But you do have an experience of actually hitting a golf shot in front of a Walker Cup captain. So you are kind of on the radar somewhat when it comes to Walker Cup. I mean, they've seen the action. They've seen the action.
That's a great way to see it.
And I'm setting you up because I know that there's a great story about this from the Jones Cup. So we're going to close this episode out with this story. I will yield the floor. Tell me about this tee shot in front of Captain Crosby.
Yes. So Nathaniel Crosby was on the first tee at the Jones Cup, but to give you some background of why I was not on his radar, is a little bit of a backstory that my cousin and his 12-year-old daughter are certainly going to appreciate. She is 12 years old. She is a very legitimate scratch golfer. She is
hate her already, but I'd love to have her on the podcast.
Doesn't everybody? Trust me. If you saw her hit chip shots, you would definitely hit her. And she'll be very successful going forward. But I try to get down there to Atlanta probably 3 to 4 times a year to practice at his home course, which is Ansley Golf Club / Setting Down Creek in Roswell. And so, we obviously have golf matches, and we'll play 9 holes or 18 holes against each other. And, it's always just some kind of friendly wager. I pay for dinner, or her dad pays for dinner, my cousin. And this one time, I don't know why I thought about it. I said, well, let's up the ante here. Let's do something that's funny that, can affect us in some way off the golf course. So I proposed that the winner of the match, it was me and her father versus her and one of the pros at their course who had played on KFT. So you can clearly tell which team was more benefited at the beginning of this match.
You're not real bright, are you, Nick? I'm just
we didn't get enough golf shots on the card. So the wager of this is the winning team buys golf balls for the losing team and gets to embroider the side of the golf ball. And the caveat is that 3 of us play competitive golf, that person had to play those golf balls in a tournament. So that it ended there. So we lost the match. I said, I play Pro VX. Go ahead and get me whatever you would like embroidered, and we'll go.
So this is, you mean monogram, right?
Monogram.
Right,
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. So I don't know what's coming. I'm getting texts, for weeks to come. This was right around Christmas before the Jones Cup. And I'm getting texts of, sweet kitten, soft bunny, all those kind of funny things.
Okay.
And I'm like, who knows what I'm going to get?
Right.
So it comes to Jones Cup. Right before I leave, I get the golf balls in the box, and I just take them and I put them in my bag, and I'm on my way. So all getting back to why I probably, at this juncture, we'll be making the Walker Cup in a few years.
Yes. You heard it here. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. Is we get to the first tee, and actually the 10th hole at Jones Cup, and it's me, Noah Steele, and who's obviously a stud, just won on Canadian tour, as well as Will Holcomb, who
oh my God,
who's the greatest person of all time. We played together that's a story for another time. I was with him.
What do you
when
mean
he made
another
his
time?
two-hole.
We're not closing this episode. Have you got
So,
a Holcomb story? I mean, all right, finish this story first.
So so I played with those two guys, and then Will was making somewhat of a very legitimate run to possibly, if he won Jones Cup or what have you, to be on the Walker Cup team. And the kid bleeds red, white, and blue. No one has to tell him that.
Right.
And so we're on the first tee. I take out the golf balls that I'm going to be playing, and of course, we're under the tent. It's raining, so Nathaniel's under there, us three, a couple of their caddies, and whomever the starter was at the time, and said, can you identify your golf ball? So I'm marking the side of it. And then I look, and it's the side of my golf ball is the last name of the kid who beat me in our state amateur earlier that year. And I look at, so like, he announces my name and is like, oh, you're Nick Maccario, and so on and so forth. So we're identifying our golf balls, and Nathaniel's standing right there. And I look on this golf ball and I say, I'm playing a Titleist 1 with Organisac on the side of my golf ball. And they're giving me this look. I go, this is the name of the kid who beat me in our state am last year. And I'm like, I lost a bet to my 12-year-old cousin. And Nathaniel died laughing, which made me feel more comfortable because I was like, what a time for me to be, introduced to this guy. And then I get up to the tee box. I'm pretty sure I whipped it left into the bunkers, but that was my first encounter with a Walker Cup captain, which went swimmingly.
Sounds like it. I mean, I'm guessing that they've already emailed you asking for shirt and pant sizes.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Yeah. 100%. So it was fun. Will and Noah thought it was absolutely hilarious. And I've known Will since his time at the US MidAm before he made this crazy run. I was with him when he made 2 hole-in-ones in a row at Pinehurst at the Cradle. So we go way back.
That guy is that's a crazy. I forgot about that pairing, because Noah Steele is, in fact, Noah's going to be a guest on the Back of the Range very soon as well. I mean,
love it.
So I mean, you're just an incredibly nice kid from Canada.
Very.
And then you got the Mass MidAm, and then Holcomb, which is just oh my God!
He bleeds red, white, and blue, and bald eagle.
Yes. Never
no other way to say
met a duck that he doesn't want to shoot.
Exactly.
Well, Nick, I knew this was going to be a good one. No doubt in my mind. Great stories. Really happy for you that you had such a great year. Obviously, great. 2020 was fantastic, but to cap 21 with a fantastic run at the US MidAm. I see a lot more in your future, sir. So I will look for you in 2022. But for now, I appreciate it. Thank you for stopping by the Back of the Range.
No, I appreciate it. I love the episodes, and it was awesome to come on. So looking forward to more lobster and steak at a future point.
Attaboy. All right, make sure you send this episode to your 12-year-old cousin, though.
Oh, she'll be the first one to listen.
And there you have it. Special thanks, Nick Maccario, for being a guest on this week's episode of the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. Again, don't forget, follow along on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Every single episode is available at thebackoftherange.com. We'll see you next time here at the Back of the Range.